There's a pattern you've lived through more than once. You meet someone and the connection feels ancient, like you've known them across lifetimes. The energy between you is magnetic, undeniable. You feel seen in ways you've never felt seen before. And then, just when you think you've finally found the person who will stay, who will choose you back with the same intensity you're choosing them, they pull away. They become distant, unavailable, confused. They say they need space, they're not ready, they have things to work through, and you're left standing in the wreckage of what felt like destiny, asking yourself the same question you've asked before: why does this keep happening to me? If you're an empath who has been drawn again and again to people who can't fully commit, people who seem like your twin flame but who ultimately run from the very connection they awakened in you, then what I'm about to share with you will change the way you see everything, because the reason this keeps happening isn't about bad luck. It's not about you being too much or not enough. It's not even really about them. It's about something far deeper, something Carl Jung spent his entire life trying to help people understand. It's about the unconscious forces that drive attraction, the hidden contracts your soul makes before you even realize it, and the painful but necessary role these relationships play in your own becoming. Most people will tell you that empaths attract narcissists. And while there's some truth to that on the surface, it misses the real story. Because what's actually happening is far more intricate, far more purposeful, and yes, far more painful than a simple dynamic of giver and taker. What's happening is that your soul is calling in a very specific kind of person, not to complete you, but to show you the part of yourself you've been running from your entire life. And until you see that part, until you integrate it, you will keep attracting the same unavailable energy in different faces, different names, different stories, but always the same ending. Jung called this the shadow, the part of you that you've disowned, the part you've hidden even from yourself. And here's the twist that almost no one talks about. Empaths don't just carry their own shadow, they carry the shadow for others. You've spent so much of your life feeling other people's pain, absorbing their emotions, trying to heal them, fix them, love them into wholeness, that you've become a master at avoiding your own darkness. You've made yourself useful by being the one who understands, who forgives, who stays. But in doing so, you've abandoned the part of you that needs to be selfish, that needs to say no, that needs to walk away, that needs to stop saving everyone, and finally save yourself. And so your soul, in its infinite wisdom, calls in someone who mirrors that split, someone who has all the light you're drawn to, but who also carries the exact commitment wound that forces you to face your own. They can't commit because somewhere deep inside, neither can you. Not to yourself, not to your own needs, not to the truth that you are not here to be everyone's healer. You are here to become whole. And wholeness requires you to reclaim every part of yourself you gave away in the name of love. This isn't about blame, it's about awakening. And if you've been stuck in this cycle, if you've been wondering why the universe keeps sending you people who awaken your soul but break your heart, then you're ready to hear what comes next. Because once you understand the hidden reason behind this pattern, once you see the role you've been unconsciously playing, everything shifts. The attraction doesn't just fade, it transforms. And so do you. Have you ever felt like you were chosen by someone, only to realize later that you were the one doing all the choosing? Let's go deeper into what Jung understood about the psyche. Because without this foundation, the pattern you're living through will continue to feel like a curse instead of what it actually is, an invitation. Jung believed that we are all born whole, but through the process of growing up, of learning what's acceptable and what's not, we split ourselves in two. We develop a persona, the face we show the world, the version of ourselves that's safe, that's loved, that's approved of. And then we develop a shadow, everything we had to hide in order to be that acceptable version. The anger, the selfishness, the neediness, the rage, the sexuality, the darkness. All of it gets pushed down into the unconscious where it doesn't disappear. It waits. For empaths, this split is even more extreme, because you didn't just learn to hide your darkness to be loved. You learned to become a sanctuary for other people's darkness. You learned that your worth was tied to how much you could hold, how much you could forgive, how deeply you could understand someone else's pain. And so you became very, very good at feeling everything except your own unmet needs. You became very good at giving everything except boundaries. You became very good at seeing everyone except yourself. And here's where the twin flame enters the story. A twin flame, in the Jungian sense, is not your other half. It's your mirror. It's the person who reflects back to you the parts of your psyche that are still unconscious, still unintegrated, still calling out to be seen. They are not here to complete you. They are here to shatter the illusion that you were ever incomplete. But that shattering, it feels like dying. Because in order to see yourself clearly, you have to stop seeing them as the answer. You have to stop making them responsible for your wholeness. You have to stop waiting for them to choose you and start asking why you haven't been choosing yourself. When an empath meets someone who feels like a twin flame, what's actually happening on a soul level is a recognition. Your unconscious recognizes their unconscious. You see in them the qualities you've disowned in yourself. Maybe it's their independence, their ability to walk away, their refusal to sacrifice themselves for connection. Maybe it's their chaos, their unpredictability, their refusal to be tamed. Whatever it is, it's the part of you that you've been taught is unlovable. And so you're drawn to them with an intensity that feels spiritual, that feels fated, because your psyche is trying to reclaim what it lost. But here's the painful part. They can't give you what you're looking for. Not because they're broken, not because they're afraid, but because what you're actually looking for isn't in them. It's in you. The commitment you want from them is the commitment you need to make to yourself. The consistency you crave from them is the consistency you need to give yourself. The choice you're waiting for them to make is the choice you've been avoiding your entire life. To finally stop abandoning yourself in the name of love. Jung called this process individuation. It's the journey of becoming whole by integrating the shadow, by reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away, by stopping the projection and starting the real work of self-reclamation. And twin flame connections, especially the ones that don't work out the way you hoped, are some of the most powerful catalysts for individuation that exist, because they force you to see that the person you've been chasing, the person you've been trying to fix, the person you've been waiting to choose you, is not your savior. They're your teacher, and the lesson is always the same. Come home to yourself. This is why the pattern repeats. Not because you're cursed, not because you're unworthy, but because you haven't learned the lesson yet. You haven't stopped making someone else responsible for your wholeness. You haven't stopped giving your power away to someone who was never meant to hold it. You haven't stopped being the empath who saves everyone and started being the person who finally saves themselves. There's a concept in Jungian psychology called the anima and animus. The anima is the feminine aspect within a man's psyche, and the animus is the masculine aspect within a woman's psyche. But it goes deeper than gender. It's about the qualities, the energies, the parts of ourselves that we've repressed because they didn't fit the role we were taught to play. For empaths, especially those who identify as the divine feminine in twin flame dynamics, the animus often represents everything you've been afraid to embody. Assertiveness, boundaries, the ability to walk away, the willingness to prioritize your own needs, the capacity to say no without guilt. And so when you meet someone who embodies those qualities, someone who can walk away without looking back, someone who doesn't need you the way you need them, someone who can commit to themselves even when it means not committing to you, you're mesmerized. Because on some level, you know that's the part of you that you need to reclaim. That's the medicine. That's the missing piece. But instead of integrating it, instead of becoming it, you project it onto them. You make them the one who has what you're missing. You make them the one you need in order to feel whole. And in doing so, you give away your power all over again. This is the hidden reason empaths attract twin flames who can't commit. It's not because you're drawn to emotionally unavailable people for no reason. It's because your soul is trying to teach you how to become emotionally unavailable to anything that doesn't serve your highest good. Your soul is trying to teach you how to walk away from connections that drain you, how to prioritize your own healing, how to stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to choose yourself. But as long as you're projecting that lesson onto someone else, as long as you're trying to learn it through them instead of becoming it yourself, the pattern will continue. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what's happening here. You think it's fate that you keep meeting people who awaken your soul but can't stay. You think it's destiny that you keep falling for people who mirror your deepest wounds. But it's not fate. It's your unconscious trying to get your attention. It's your psyche trying to show you what you haven't been willing to see. That the person you've been waiting for, the person you've been trying to merge with, The person you've been making responsible for your happiness isn't outside of you. They never were. The twin flame who can't commit isn't running from you. They're running from the same thing you're running from. The terror of being truly seen, the fear of being consumed, the wound of not being enough, the unconscious belief that love means losing yourself. And until both of you do the inner work, until both of you integrate your shadows, until both of you stop projecting wholeness onto each other and start creating it within yourselves, the dynamic will stay stuck. One person chasing, one person running, both of you convinced the other holds the key, when the truth is, you're both standing in front of locked doors you're too afraid to open. This is why so many twin flame connections end in separation. Not because they weren't real, not because the love wasn't deep, but because the work required to move from projection to integration is brutal. It requires you to stop seeing them as your salvation and start seeing them as your mirror. It requires you to stop trying to heal them and start healing yourself. It requires you to stop waiting for them to choose you and start asking why you keep choosing people who can't choose you back. And here's the truth that no one wants to hear. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. Sometimes the deepest commitment is the one you make to yourself. Sometimes the twin flame journey isn't about union with them. It's about union with the parts of yourself you abandoned the moment you decided someone else's love was more important than your own. So let's talk about what this looks like in real life. You meet someone and the connection is instant. There's a sense of familiarity, of coming home, of finally being understood. The conversations go deep. The silences feel comfortable. The chemistry is undeniable. And for a while it feels like everything you've been waiting for is finally happening. They see you. They get you. They make you feel alive in ways you forgot were possible. And you open up in ways you haven't in years, maybe ever. You let them in. You trust them with your wounds, your fears, your dreams. You show them the parts of yourself you've kept hidden from everyone else. And then something shifts. Maybe it's sudden, maybe it's gradual. But you feel it. The energy changes. They start pulling back. They become inconsistent. They stop initiating. They say they need space, they're overwhelmed, they're dealing with things, they're not ready. And you're left in this agonizing limbo trying to make sense of what happened. Did I do something wrong? Did I say too much? Did I ask for too much? Did I scare them away? And so you start bending yourself into shapes you don't recognize, trying to be less needy, less intense, less you, hoping that if you just give them enough space, enough understanding, enough patience, they'll come back, but they don't. Or if they do, it's only to pull back again. And the cycle continues. You're in, you're out. They're close, they're distant. They say they care, but their actions say otherwise. And you're caught in this dance where you're always the one reaching, always the one trying, always the one holding on, while they're always the one leaving, always the one unsure, always the one who can't fully commit. And every time they pull away, it confirms the deepest wound you carry. I'm not enough. If I were enough, they would stay. If I were enough, they would choose me. If I were enough, they wouldn't keep running. But what if their inability to commit has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with what you're unconsciously teaching yourself through them? This is the part where Jung's work becomes critical, because what you're experiencing isn't just a relationship dynamic. It's a psychological pattern. It's your unconscious using this person to show you the wound you've been avoiding your whole life. And that wound isn't, I'm not enough. That's the story your ego tells you to avoid the deeper truth. The real wound, the one buried beneath all the self-blame and analysis and trying to figure out what went wrong, is this: I don't know how to stay committed to myself. You've spent your whole life being the one who stays, the one who fights, the one who doesn't give up on people. And because of that, you've never had to face the part of you that wants to run, the part of you that's terrified of being trapped, the part of you that doesn't want to be responsible for someone else's happiness, the part of you that wants to be free. You've projected that part onto every person who's ever left you, every person who's ever been unable to commit, every person who's ever chosen themselves over you. And you've made them the villain in your story, the one who hurt you, the one who wasn't evolved enough, the one who didn't recognize your worth. But what if they're not the villain? What if they're the messenger? What if every time they pull away, they're showing you what you need to learn how to do? What if their inability to commit is reflecting your inability to commit to your own boundaries, your own needs, your own truth? What if the reason you keep attracting this pattern is because your soul is trying to teach you how to walk away from anything that doesn't honor you, even when it feels like love, even when it feels like destiny, even when it feels like everything you've been waiting for? This is the hidden reason. This is the piece almost no one talks about. You're not attracting unavailable people because you're broken. You're attracting them because you're becoming. You're in the process of integrating the part of yourself that knows how to leave, that knows how to say no, that knows how to choose yourself even when it hurts. And until you stop projecting that onto someone else and start embodying it yourself, the pattern will repeat. Different person, same lesson, different face, same mirror. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness, even when it looks like we're falling apart. He called it the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold the tension between opposites and create something new. And twin flame connections, especially the painful ones, are some of the most powerful expressions of this process, because they force you to hold the tension between love and loss, between connection and separation, between the desire to merge and the need to individuate. And in that tension, if you can stay with it, if you can resist the urge to collapse into either extreme, something transforms. Most empaths collapse into the desire to merge. You want union so badly that you'll abandon yourself to get it. You'll tolerate inconsistency, you'll accept breadcrumbs, you'll wait years for someone to be ready, because the idea of losing them, of being alone again, of admitting that this connection might not be what you thought it was, feels unbearable. And so you stay in the tension by staying in the relationship, even when the relationship is destroying you. You convince yourself that if you just love them enough, understand them enough, give them enough space, they'll finally see you, choose you, commit to you. But Jung would tell you that this isn't holding the tension. This is avoiding it. Because real tension, the kind that transforms you, requires you to stay present to both truths at the same time. I love this person deeply, and I cannot continue sacrificing myself for this connection. I feel a soul bond with them, and I also feel my own soul dying in the waiting. I believe they're my twin flame, and I also know I deserve someone who shows up consistently, holding that tension without collapsing into either side, without trying to resolve it prematurely, without making them wrong or making yourself wrong, is the work. That's where the transformation happens. Because when you can hold that tension, when you can love someone and also love yourself enough to walk away if necessary, something inside you integrates. The part of you that's been terrified of being alone, and the part of you that knows you can't keep doing this finally meet. The part of you that wants to save them and the part of you that knows you can't save anyone finally merge. The empath and the individuated self finally become one. And when that happens, the dynamic shifts. Either the other person rises to meet you in that new energy or they don't. But it stops mattering in the same way, because you're no longer waiting for them to make you whole. You've already done that yourself. This is what Jung meant by individuation. It's not about becoming perfect. It's not about transcending your humanity. It's about becoming whole by integrating all the parts of yourself you've been at war with. The part that needs love and the part that needs freedom. The part that wants connection and the part that needs solitude. The part that's desperate to be chosen and the part that's tired of waiting. When those parts stop fighting each other, when you stop trying to be just one thing, just the giver, just the empath, just the one who stays, you become free. And that freedom is what actually allows real love to exist. Because real love, the kind Jung talked about, the kind that doesn't destroy you, doesn't require you to be less than you are. It doesn't require you to silence your needs, ignore your intuition, or betray yourself to keep the peace. Real love meets you in your wholeness and asks you to stay whole, not to fragment yourself to make room for someone else's unhealed wounds. And if the person you're with can't meet you there, if they need you to stay small so they can feel safe, if they need you to keep chasing so they don't have to face themselves, then they're not your twin flame. They're your teacher. And the lesson is to stop betraying yourself in the name of a connection that was never meant to diminish you. Twin flames, in the truest sense, are not about romantic union. They're about soul evolution. They're about becoming the person you were always meant to be by facing everything you've been running from. And sometimes that means the person who awakened you is not the person you're meant to be with. Sometimes the awakening is the gift, and the separation is the mercy. Sometimes the universe loves you enough to take away the person you thought you couldn't live without, so you can finally learn that you never needed them to survive. You just needed to remember who you were before you made someone else more important than your own soul. Let's talk about what happens when you start to do the work. When you stop waiting for them to change and start changing yourself. When you stop analyzing their behavior and start examining your own patterns. When you stop making them responsible for your happiness and start asking what happiness even means outside of this connection. Because this is where most people get stuck. They hear the message, they understand the concept, they know intellectually that they need to choose themselves, but they don't know how. They don't know what that actually looks like when you're still in love with someone who can't love you back the way you need. The first thing that happens is grief. Real, deep, soul-level grief. Because you're not just letting go of a person, you're letting go of a version of yourself. The version who believed that love meant suffering, that connection required sacrifice, that your worth was determined by how much you could endure. You're letting go of the fantasy that if you just loved them enough, it would be enough. You're letting go of the hope that one day they'll wake up and realize what they had and come back ready. You're letting go of the story you've been telling yourself about destiny, about soulmates, about the universe bringing you together for a reason, and that loss, that death of the old self, is excruciating. Jung talked about this as the nigredo, the blackening, the first stage of alchemical transformation. It's the stage where everything you thought you knew falls apart, where the structures you built your identity on crumble, where you're forced to sit in the darkness with nothing to distract you from the truth. You've been running from yourself your entire life. And the person you've been running toward was just a mirror showing you what you didn't want to see. And in that darkness, in that grief, there's a temptation to go back, to reach out, to try again, to convince yourself that maybe this time will be different. But if you can resist that urge, if you can stay in the fire, something begins to shift. You start to notice the ways you abandoned yourself, the times you said yes when you meant no, the times you ignored your intuition because you didn't want to lose them, the times you made excuses for their behavior because facing the truth felt too painful. The times you convinced yourself that their potential was more important than your present reality. And as you notice these patterns, not with judgment but with compassion, you start to see how the dynamic wasn't just about them. It was about you. It was about the ways you learned to survive by making yourself smaller, quieter, easier. And that realization, painful as it is also liberating. Because if you're part of the pattern, you can change the pattern. What would it feel like to stop waiting for them to see your worth and start seeing it yourself? This is the question that changes everything. Not because it's easy to answer, but because it forces you to confront the truth you've been avoiding. You've been outsourcing your self-worth to people who were never equipped to give it to you. You've been waiting for external validation to confirm what you should have known all along. That you are whole, you are enough. You are worthy of a love that doesn't require you to beg for it. And as long as you're waiting for someone else to prove that to you, you'll keep attracting people who can't. Because the lesson isn't about them choosing you. The lesson is about you choosing you. And when you start choosing yourself, when you start setting boundaries not as punishment but as self-respect, when you start walking away from situations that drain you, not because you don't care but because you care about yourself more, something miraculous happens. The pattern breaks, not because you've become cold or closed off, but because you've become whole. You've integrated the part of yourself that knows how to stay and the part that knows how to leave. You've stopped being just the empath and become the person who can hold their own energy without needing someone else to validate it. This is when twin flame dynamics either transform into something real, something reciprocal, something where both people are showing up as whole individuals, or they end, and both outcomes are a victory. Because if they rise to meet you, if they do their own work and come back as a partner who can commit, who can show up, who can match your energy, then you've both evolved. And if they don't, if they stay stuck in their patterns, if they keep running, then you've freed yourself from a dynamic that was keeping you from your own becoming. Either way, you win. Because you're no longer abandoning yourself for a connection. You're honoring yourself within it or without it. There's a phrase Jung used that not enough people understand. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And for empaths caught in twin flame dynamics, this is the entire journey distilled into one sentence. Because who you truly are is not the person who waits, who sacrifices, who loves from a place of lack. Who you truly are is the person who knows their worth so deeply that they don't need anyone else to confirm it. Who you truly are is the person who can love fully and walk away cleanly. Who you truly are is the person who doesn't need a twin flame to complete them, because they've already completed themselves. But becoming that person requires you to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. It requires you to look at the ways you've used relationships to escape your own emptiness, your own fear, your own unhealed wounds. It requires you to stop blaming them for not showing up and start asking why you kept showing up for someone who couldn't meet you. It requires you to stop seeing yourself as the victim of unavailable people and start seeing yourself as someone who's been unavailable to their own needs, their own truth, their own power. This doesn't mean you weren't hurt. This doesn't mean their behavior was okay. This doesn't mean you deserve to be treated the way you were treated. What it means is that you have a choice now. You can keep telling the story of what they did to you, how they broke you, how they weren't ready, how they didn't see your value. Or you can tell a new story, a story where you reclaim your power, where you honor the lessons, where you thank them for being the mirror that showed you what you needed to heal, and then you walk forward into a version of yourself who no longer attracts that dynamic because you're no longer resonating at that frequency. Jung believed that everything in our external world is a reflection of our internal world. And if you keep attracting people who can't commit, it's because somewhere inside, there's a part of you that can't commit to yourself. There's a part of you that's still waiting for permission to choose yourself, to prioritize yourself, to stop sacrificing yourself. And that part will keep creating external situations that force you to choose until you finally do. Until you finally say, I love you, but I love me more. I see the potential in this, but I honor the reality. I believe in us, but I believe in myself more. And when you make that choice, when you finally commit to yourself with the same intensity you've been committing to people who can't commit to you, everything changes. The people who were once unavailable either become available or disappear. The connections that were once painful either transform or end. The patterns that were once unconscious become conscious. And you step into a version of yourself who is no longer at the mercy of someone else's readiness, someone else's healing, someone else's choice. This is the gift of the twin flame who can't commit. They're not here to break you. They're here to wake you. They're not here to prove you're not enough. They're here to show you that you've been enough all along, and you just forgot. They're not here to complete you. They're here to crack you open so you can finally see that you were never incomplete. You were just convinced that love meant losing yourself, when the truth is, real love is what happens when two whole people choose each other, not because they need each other, but because they want to share the fullness of who they are. And maybe they'll get there. Maybe they'll do their work, integrate their shadow, heal their wounds, and come back as someone who can truly meet you. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll stay in their patterns, keep running, keep choosing fear over love. But it doesn't matter anymore, because you're not waiting, you're not hoping, you're not making your happiness contingent on their evolution. You're living, you're growing, you're choosing yourself. And that, more than any union, any connection, any validation from anyone else, is what true freedom feels like. So where does that leave you now? If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, it means something in you recognizes the truth of what we've been exploring. It means you're ready to stop repeating the pattern and start transforming it. It means you're ready to stop being the empath who loses themselves in love and start being the person who finds themselves through it. The hidden reason empaths attract twin flames who can't commit isn't a curse. It's a calling. It's your soul's way of saying you've given enough to others, now it's time to give to yourself. You've healed enough wounds that aren't yours, now it's time to heal your own. You've been everyone's safe space, now it's time to become your own. And the person who can't commit, the person who keeps running, the person who awakens your soul but breaks your heart, is not your enemy. They're your teacher. And the lesson is always the same. You are not here to lose yourself in another person. You are here to find yourself through the process of loving and letting go, of holding on and releasing, of staying open and setting boundaries. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And that's what's happening here. You're being transformed, not by them, but by your willingness to see what this connection is reflecting back to you, by your willingness to do the inner work, to integrate the shadow, to reclaim the parts of yourself you've been projecting onto someone else. And that transformation, as painful as it is also the most sacred work you will ever do, because it's the work of becoming whole. You don't need them to choose you. You need to choose yourself. You don't need them to commit. You need to commit to your own healing, your own growth, your own becoming. You don't need them to see your worth. You need to see it yourself so clearly that you stop accepting anything less than what you deserve. And when you do that, when you finally make that choice, the twin flame dynamic stops being about union with them and becomes about union with yourself. And that is the real journey. That is the real purpose. That is what few people ever understand. The path forward isn't about figuring out how to make them stay. It's about figuring out who you become when you stop waiting for them to. It's about learning to trust yourself again, to listen to your intuition, to honor your needs, to set boundaries that protect your energy, to walk away from connections that diminish you, even when they feel like destiny. It's about realizing that the love you've been searching for in them has been inside you all along, waiting for you to come home to it. If this resonated with you, if you felt something shift inside you as you listened, I want to invite you to do something, not for me, but for yourself. Take a moment and reflect on what came up for you. What patterns did you recognize? What truths did you feel in your body? What are you ready to let go of? And if you feel moved to, share your experience in the comments below. Not because I need you to, but because sometimes speaking your truth out loud, even to strangers, is the first step in reclaiming your power. And I'll be here, reading every word, holding space for your journey. If this video helped you see something you couldn't see before, if it gave you permission to choose yourself in a way you haven't been able to, then please consider subscribing to this channel, because this work, this exploration of the soul through Jung's wisdom, is what we do here. We don't offer quick fixes or superficial advice. We go deep. We go real. We honor the complexity of the human experience and trust that you're strong enough to face the truth even when it hurts. And if you know someone who's stuck in this pattern, someone who keeps attracting unavailable people and can't figure out why, share this video with them, not as judgment, but as love. Because sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is a mirror that shows them what they haven't been able to see. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me with your time, your attention, your heart. Thank you for doing the work, for asking the hard questions, for being willing to look at yourself with honesty and compassion. The journey of becoming whole is not easy, but it's the only journey worth taking, and you're not walking it alone. Until next time, choose yourself, honor yourself, love yourself enough to walk away from anything that asks you to be less than you are, because you are not here to be half of someone else. You are here to be all of you.